I was thinking, oh, okay, I've lost my job. So how am I going to make my payments? How am I going to pay for my rent? How am I going to pay for my mortgage if you have one? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Veronia and here I talk about all things money, career and having a positive mindset for success. So last week I posted a video on 5 things I think you should be doing if you have been furloughed or if you've maybe seen a reduction in your income. And I also mentioned actually even if you are on furlough you can be at risk of being made redundant. So I really wanted to make a follow-up video on if you have been made redundant. Also if you're self-employed and obviously your contract has now ended and you're not able to find any work. I know there is also the self-employment income support scheme, but I think quite a few people have fallen through the cracks with that and some people aren't eligible, especially if you only started becoming self-employed recently. I really wanted to do this video to help people that may be struggling with any loss of income, and I'm hoping that I can give you some tips that will help you go forward. So I have been made redundant before, and yeah, it was an emotional time. I think there was a lot to process. I was working for a recruitment agency and basically they were getting rid of one of the London offices, and so we all got made redundant. That was the first time I had actually been made redundant, and it had already taken me a few months just to get that job. I was only working there for about 5 months and it was actually my first sort of graduate job, so obviously I was really excited and I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is like my new future, this is my new career, and then to be told 5 months later that yeah, sorry, you know, you've been made redundant. And I really wanted to have passed that 6-month mark because I always thought as long as you have that 6 months experience then you'll be able to find a job really easily. So yeah, I was quite upset, to be honest. I think we were so shocked that we just ended up laughing about it and thought, let's just go to dinner just to celebrate us losing our jobs. But at the same time, when I was made redundant, the economy was doing okay. So it's definitely a different situation to how it is now because so many people are being made redundant, but there aren't really a lot of jobs becoming available. It is a lot more difficult. So my first thing I would say is to just take the time to check and reflect. Now the reason why I say that is because when I was made redundant, I had so many thoughts going through my head. I was thinking, oh okay, I've lost my job, so how am I going to make my payments? How am I going to pay for my rent? How am I going to pay for my mortgage if you have one? If I've got utilities, if I've got any payments, how am I going to pay for that? Am I even going to be able to find a new job? Am I going to have to look for another job in a completely different industry? All these thoughts were coming through my head, and I think that's where I started getting a bit emotional and I started worrying a lot. But if I could go back, I would definitely use that time to process everything, take a few deep breaths, and also not rushing to anything. I think if you have lost your job, you're going to be feeling very emotional, very heightened, and obviously very nervous. But I think the first thing I would definitely do is to just try and process it, process your feelings, process what's going on, then try to make an action plan out of that. One of those things is checking your finances. So I mentioned this in my previous video. If you haven't watched that, then I will put a link in the description below. Basically, it's the same thing. You need to be budgeting, you need to be cutting costs where possible, especially if you know that you don't actually have any income coming in anytime soon. You are going to need to make that money stretch. And when I say stretch, I mean stretch. If you have been made redundant by your company, do check if you are eligible for a sort of redundancy payout because some companies will give that. If you've maybe accrued any holiday, you should be getting holiday pay for that, so definitely check with your HR department. It is a bit difficult for self-employed, but I would just definitely check that you're being paid the amount of hours that you have actually worked for that company. I would also check if you are eligible for any benefits. So for example, you might need to apply for universal credit. I know it's not much, but a little bit of something is better than nothing. Pride will probably seep through as well, because if you've worked all your life to be expected to now go and apply for benefits, you probably will feel embarrassed. But at the moment, especially because of lockdown, it is really difficult out there and getting a job is a lot harder. So if I was you, I would try and just get as much help as you can. If you do think about applying for benefits, make sure you try and do it as soon as possible, because usually there are delays and it can take a while, especially if a lot of of people are being made redundant at the same time, and then obviously try and use that to help build yourself up. There is no shame in getting help once in a while. This is probably difficult if you're working in a sector where they are definitely struggling. So for example, the travel and tourism industry, because they are probably one of the most hard hit. It may take a while for them to get back up to speed. So if you do work for those industries, then you are going to need to try and get all the help that you can. I would use that as an opportunity to check what you need and not what you want. When you're looking through your expenses, definitely check, is this something that, you know, is a nice to have, or is this something I genuinely need? Really try and evaluate your expenses and scrutinize it well. Also use this as an opportunity to contact your lenders. You may actually be able to lower your monthly payments. So for example, if you've got credit card debt, again, do your due diligence with that. Also, your household is usually one of your biggest expenses. So if you have a mortgage, check if you can remortgage to a lower interest rate. The Bank of England lowered the interest rate a few months ago, so there will be companies that have started to lower their own interest rates and their products as well. If you are able to refinance, it can actually save you a lot of money, especially in the long run. So I would definitely do that. Check with a mortgage broker and do your own research. If you are renting, make sure to tell your landlord as well. Do not just stop paying. A lot of the times your landlord will be able to compromise and see if they can make a payment plan. Landlords can actually apply for payment holidays as well. So if you are able to talk to your landlord, definitely do that, especially if you have lost your job and you don't know if you're going to be able to afford your rent. Do not just sit there and not tell your landlord anything and just say, you know what, well, they've extended the eviction process, so I'm not going to tell him anything and not pay my rent. Don't do that. Just try and talk to your landlord and see if you can come up with a resolution. I know there are some rogue landlords out there, but I think the majority of landlords will understand, so hopefully you do have a nice one. To be honest, they can't evict you anyway, so I'm sure landlords will try to negotiate as much as possible for you. Now, I would also use this time to rethink and reassess your career, because once you've kind of processed everything and you've done everything you can financially, this could be an opportunity, if you've always hated your job, to start thinking about what other industries you might want to go into and what kind of companies you might want to start working with. Again, that might give you an opportunity to start thinking about, do you actually even want to work for an employer? Do you want to just start your own business? For me, when I realized that I was being made redundant, I started to think about actually what do I want to do long term, because I realized that recruitment actually wasn't for me. There were some elements that I really enjoyed and there were some elements which I absolutely hated. So then I started to think about actually what kind of other career paths could I take, and that's when I actually landed in HR and used that as an opportunity to think about what skills do I need for HR and what skills do I currently have and how do I build on them. You might want a completely different career path. Use that as an opportunity to think about what skills you might need to build, also what you might need to learn. Just start increasing your knowledge about it and start understanding what you want. So if you have actually been made redundant, there are some employers that will help you with the job hunting process as part of the redundancy package, so definitely take that into consideration. Also, if you've recently left university, or actually if you're an alumni, there is usually a career department that will tend to help, and they also tend to have a lot of resources as well. I'm not sure how it's working during the pandemic, because I assume people are just working from home. Definitely check with your university anyway, because they may be able to help in some way. I also want to talk about networking, because I think it's really important, and obviously you're not actually able to go out and start networking, but there are loads of different sites that you can use. For example, I spoke about LinkedIn in my previous video. That is a really good networking tool. You're able to actually post a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. What I actually tend to see on my LinkedIn page is there are so many people that may have been made redundant and are actually looking for roles, and they are actually asking the community to share their profile or take a look at their CV, for example. Use that as an opportunity to say, here are my experiences, this is what I've done, these are the projects that I've been focusing on, and what I'm actually looking for in my next role. And you'll probably find that a lot of people will like and share your post. You may then start to get some attraction as well. So definitely try and use that as an opportunity. Also, try and connect with people. If there's a company where you've always wanted to work and you see someone that maybe has a similar job to you, or someone that works in HR, if you see recruiters as well, there's never any harm to actually connect with them and start talking. As a recruiter, I really loved it when candidates would come straight to me, because I knew exactly what they were looking for. I knew what kind of job they were looking for. I kept their name on my radar every time a new job came came up. So definitely make sure you're active, make sure that you're trying to connect with as many people. Go on virtual coffee dates. If you connect with someone and you get talking, then ask to have a chat, ask to have a video call. It's obviously going to feel a lot different because we're at home, but there's no harm in trying it, and you never know what could come out of it as well. As a side note, if you are having these coffee dates, then obviously make sure that you're dressed appropriately. For example, I don't think I want to see you in your onesie if you are looking for a job. The next thing that I want to talk about is just being able to start applying as soon as possible. Even if you haven't actually been made redundant, but you feel like you might be at risk of being made redundant, I would still just start applying, because you would rather do it sooner than later. Make sure that you're really tailoring your CV as well. If there are specific jobs and they need specific skills, make sure you're really highlighting that in your CV, especially if you're applying for totally different industries or going from marketing to finance. If I'm a manager in marketing, what I value is probably going to be different to a finance manager. When I say tailor your CV, do not lie. There is no point in lying, because if they check and you have references and they find out that you've lied, they're probably not going to keep you on for very long. So make sure that what you say is honest, but you can still make sure that you tailor your specific skills for the industry. You might even need to start applying for temporary jobs if you know that there's a lack of income coming in. So definitely use that as an opportunity to apply for as many of those jobs as possible. You will probably feel much better if you know that you're working in a temporary role, but there is at least a bit of income coming in, and during your spare time you're able to use that to apply for roles that are actually within your industry or your niche. Try to look for jobs that are still hiring now. So it might be delivery drivers, so for example for Amazon or Uber Eats, or even supermarkets. There might be jobs in the health sector. So remember previously that they were hiring for contact tracers, which was really good, because if you have any transferable skills like communication, then that was definitely a good role for you. So use that as an opportunity to check if there are any roles that don't need specific skills. And also, if you live near a farm, there are farmers that have been begging for people to become pickers. A lot of their workers tend to come from different countries in Europe, but obviously with everything happening in terms of the lockdown and the pandemic, and also Brexit as well, it has been really difficult for them to get enough workers. So they are genuinely pleading for people to come and temporarily work for them. You might not think it's an amazing role, but if it's something that's going to pay for the bills, then I would definitely try and consider that. Make sure you're taking advantage of all the job sites as well. So LinkedIn, Indeed, Reed, Glassdoor, whatever you can get your hands on, try and utilize as many as possible. But at the end of the day, your health and well-being comes first. I know it's definitely a difficult time, especially because usually if you've been made redundant, you might have a talk with your manager, or you'll have that face-to-face interaction. A lot of companies are now having to do mass redundancies either on the phone or through video calls, so it's definitely going to feel less comfortable. I know it's definitely a hard time, but make sure you're taking the time to try and process it. Use the internet for as many resources as possible. Obviously the government has given some help, but it might not be enough. But try and educate yourself, and try to keep positive as well, because remember that it's just a setback and this isn't going to be forever. But I do think that we will be able to recover in time. So guys, thank you so much for listening. I hope you really enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. I post every single Friday, so please do subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next Friday.